Welcome to episode 3 of Football Club Chairman, Hard Truth by Darren McAnthony. Obviously, I apologise for being a day late for my usual release for a new episode, and people have been asking me today. I was waiting for news that was coming out from the EFL and the FA and the PFA before I wanted to do this episode, so I'm recording this on Friday the 3rd of April from my bunker, or should I say my office here in Florida, in Orlando. I just want to give a big shout out to, well, first of all, anyone that's involved with the NHS in the UK, the medical field over here in America. Regardless of what's going on in all our worlds, we look at what's going on in your world, and kudos to you, tremendous effort. You really are on the front line, and the fight you're putting up, and that you're putting your lives on the line, and couldn't be prouder of you. And I'm sure everyone feels the same, and that's why it's so important at the moment, why we're all in lockdown, to be so respectful to those older than us and those people who work on the front lines of healthcare. So keep going. As bad as the numbers are and the figures are every day and the death rates rise, we know you're doing an incredible job, and you're going to win the battle and win the war ultimately. So that's where we all want to get to. That's where we have to be. And we all need that hope. So, massive. I can't do the clap everyone else is doing in the UK, for example, where I live. So it's just so heartwarming to see it when you see the different footage out there on Twitter and social media. I couldn't imagine what it's like to be in that industry, in that profession. We all know you're well underpaid. Maybe something after this is all said and done that needs to be addressed, because those people really are saving lives and fighting this battle more than any of us sat here in our offices or at home getting fatter or, watching stuff on Netflix. So, thoughts with them. I also want to say thank you to the people who've listened to the podcast. I'm absolutely chuffed that people actually tune in and listen. I'm not sure why, but I was sent a thing by Chartable, which tracks all the different charts and podcasts and stuff, and I'm really shocked to see on number 5 for Great Britain and Football Apple Podcasts. So, obviously behind Mr. Carragher and his greatest game, but I was really, for a new endeavour, a new thing I'm doing, to be up in the top 5 already. That's incredible. So thank you to the football, family and people out there that listen to this. It's humbling. I'm not doing this for financial gain. I'm doing this because I have a voice. I own a football club. I would hope my opinion matters at times. I hope the things I say help as we navigate into stormy waters for our own industry. I've been on this week. I've been on TalkSport. I want a big thank you to Darren Goff and Adrian Durham for having me on to talk about the various things that are going on in football, including wage deferrals and decisions that need to be made by those in power. Simon Jordan rang me the other day just to speak about, between two chairmen, he's a former chairman and owner, to talk about what's going on in football and his own feelings on it and what he's hearing on the grapevine. And, that was a really interesting conversation. And I do enjoy listening to his show on Sunday. He talks a lot of sense. So kudos to Simon for that. Coming up in this episode, I'm going to talk about a few different things. One of the things I'm going to talk about is mental health. Really, really important subject, because we're seeing all the deaths. We're seeing people, the news, the constant stream of bad news. And we don't know the effect this is going to have on people's mental health. There are already been articles and newspaper headlines on people committing suicide over this. And there's going to be people out there anxious and people low. So I want to go into that a little bit today. I want to speak about, obviously, the news that's come out from the EFL, the FA and the PFA today. I want to talk about what I'm doing with my family and my kids. And then finally, I want to talk about Netflix documentaries. And obviously, I've got one episode left of Sunderland Till I Die, season 2. So they're the subjects we're going to cover today. I've always said to you guys out there, for anyone who wants me to talk about any subject or cover any topic, it could be sports, it could be business, hit me up, message me. All my details are out there. I did promise I was going to do some interviews today with the manager and with other people, but my media department have taken that lead and are doing those, and I didn't want to be repetitious and do the same thing. So I'm going to speak about my subjects today, and I promise you my next episode is definitely going to have guests on it, and we're going to speak to various people within the industry. So that wraps it up for the first segment there, a bit of an introduction, and I apologize for the ad breaks. That's something that's put in here by the provider I use, and we'll be right back after this. Thank you. So welcome back. In this segment, we're going to talk about mental health. It's a subject, the more and more we speak about it nowadays, the more important it is to highlight it and bring it to people's attention. The old days, people never really spoke about it. People who were depressed, feeling down, feeling anxious. And the great thing, particularly sports and football, is highlighting how important mental health is to everybody, male, female, whatever you are. It doesn't matter. Your mental health is it's vital. For day to day, for getting out of bed, for being in the right state of mind. And the amount of people who reach out to me on a constant basis all the time and tell me if they're struggling or they're down or whatever. And this is before this crisis. So this crisis itself, this coronavirus crisis and the effects on it, we don't know what the effects are going to be. Never mind the death of the mortality rates of people dying from the virus, but people who are already depressed before and are now seriously depressed, people who've become anxious and becoming depressed, watching the news every day, being on social media, it affects people. It affects you. I got an email the other day from a young guy. He was 22. He was speaking about his partner's pregnant. Before this all happened, he was taking his license to be a HGV driver, to drive obviously articulated lorries, and it was going to be a great new career for him. He was going to be able to buy a house, he had his baby come in, and obviously he's been furloughed. He never got he failed the first attempt to pass the test. He never got a chance to repeat it. He's sitting at home, he's worried, he's concerned. He mentioned in his email he's thought about taking his life, and it breaks my heart to see things like that. And he's just one of many people sitting at home feeling that way. And I got to be really honest with you, and I said it the other day on the Talk Sport show. If you meet me, forget about during 90 minutes of a football game. I'm probably the worst person to sit with. But if you meet me normally outside of football, I'm just so positive minded. I always have been. I've dealt with some serious crap over the years in business, in life. And that's for another day to talk about the stuff I've had to deal with and get through. But I've always had that positive mental attitude. I've always been that jump out of bed, seize the day type person. I don't let things get to me. I don't bring them home. My wife's always said one of my greatest strengths is I could be having the worst day in the world. I'd walk through the door at 6, 7 o'clock. Her, the kids wouldn't know what was going on, good or bad. I'd always be level and the same. And I've always tried to take that. I got that from my dad. My dad, who's had his ups and downs in life and making money, losing money, things that affected our family. He was brilliant he'd walk through that door and he'd be the most positive person, no matter what was going on. The outlook would always be positive. And I love that about him. And he's still like that today. He's 70 years old. He's in isolation. I haven't seen him I miss him because we would go and have 3-4 coffees a week. It's kind of a routine. We'd meet at like 9 in the morning, we have coffee, talk about what's going on in the world, my world. And he'd always give me a positive outlook. So I really, really miss that, verbal sparring with him and the physical contact. And we do it by FaceTime. It's not quite the same, but that's the kind of person I am. I'm just that go-to person to always be positive and always look for the best outlook. I suppose you would say the glass half full instead of half empty person. I like being that person that keeps my own mental health, right up there. And I got hit the other day. I woke up the other morning, and it was one of those mornings where usually what I do is, even in isolation, I get up, I shower, I put gel in my hair, I have a shave, I get changed, I dress to come into my office here in my house and to see the kids. They're going off doing their schools, not going off, but doing their school stuff around the house. And the other morning was the first time I woke up, and I actually not felt defeated, but I felt I could have gone in and just thrown on my new Versace robe my missus bought me, which I haven't worn yet, one of my birthday presents, and just I felt like sticking my robe on and just sitting there eating Oreos, playing Football Manager for like 16 hours, not open my emails, not go look at social media, not do anything. I was in that mindset. And by the time I got to the bathroom, I was like, no, you got to turn the shower on. I got to turn the shower on. I got to get dressed. I got to snap out of this. It was really, really tough. And I thought that day, you know what, I've got to change the script here because it's the same routine. I go in my office, I open emails, it's bad news, bad news, bad news. I open up social media, it's bad news, bad news, bad news. I turn the TV on and it's just horrendous. So I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'll get my emails out of the way because obviously I'm in business and I'm responsible. I've got to answer people in business and stuff. I'm going to deal with that. I'm then going to go out and get my missus had bought me like 2 Christmases ago. I used to be a big Lego buff, but I haven't had time. She bought me one of those Bugatti Lego models, and it's a hell of a model to build. I thought I'm going to start doing my Lego. There's a great thing about when I used to do Lego and why I do it now is I forget about the world. I immerse myself, tray on the table, open all the bags by the numbers, and I just do Lego for like 2, 3, 4 hours. Couple of coffees in between, and I'm just in the Lego world. It's kind of why I used to play Football Manager as well. You just get lost, you stop thinking about what's going on in the world, and it's just you immerse yourself in something different. So I did that, To be fair, it made me feel a million times better. Probably the biggest thing that got me out of it was my kids were just doing all their Zoom calls with their school. They were doing all their projects. My son was building like a special science project to float a box with milk bottles on it in the pool outside. And that started sinking. We were laughing about it. And you know what? My kids have got their health. My wife's got her health. I've got my health. And no matter what's going on, that's all I can be thankful for. I know this will end. I know we'll come out of this. I know there's going to be life after this. I know it's going to affect people in so many different ways. But I can't be that person who sticks a robe on and just sits on the couch all day and thinks the worst. So I snapped out of it, but I was low. And it was probably also reading emails from people I'm trying to help, and I'm emailing them back. And then I thought, well, you're a bit of a hypocrite because you're emailing someone back like that young guy and saying, hey, you got a wife, you got a baby on the way, you're going to get your job back, you go and get 2 other jobs, you're going to buy your house, things are going to be good. And then there's me the next morning in bed and I can hardly get myself out of bed. So I thought, no, I got to snap out of this. But I think it's really important to talk about it because we're all feeling the same. And I guess someone said the other day, if you're not anxious right now, geez, you've got some icy veins in you, that's for sure. And you'd be a hell of a poker player. But I guess we're all a little bit anxious. And it's like the news changes every day, whether you're on the left or the right, or whether you're hammering Trump or hammering Boris Johnson or whatever you want to do. The news changes every day. And right now, all we can do is isolate and follow the mandate and follow the rules and hope, as they say over here in America, we hit the apex, we hit the curve and we come back down. And hopefully that by May the 1st, my own prediction is by May the 1st, they're going to have to let people go back to work, but we're going to live in, it's probably going to be a very masked environment. We're all going to be wearing masks for a period of time, which I totally am fully behind. But when you see the economic numbers, what's going on with jobs, we have to get back to work. And as horrible as that sounds, why you see the mortality rates rising, you're hoping by May the 1st, the curve, the apex has been hit, we're coming down. And then obviously we can go out and we can be very careful about how we go about our business, but we can start seeing businesses reopen because there's going to be a lot more victims in this crisis. And it's not just from the coronavirus itself. It's going to be the economic follow-on and whether we could forget recession if we hit a depression. And that's why this talk of being locked up for 6 months is not going to happen. There's going to be anarchy. You know that, not from my side. I'll sit in my office for 6 months if I'm told to, because that's what we've got to do. But there's millions of people out there who will not sit in their homes by the end of this month. It's just not going to happen. So I think, we pray every day that we wake up and we see better news. We pray every day we wake up and somebody's got a vaccine instead of a year down the line, that they fast forward it and speed it up. We pray every day that we hit these curves and we're coming out of it. We pray every day we see Italy and Spain's numbers drops because they're the ones we all look at and go, are we next? So that's the world we live in. But what I'll say to people out there is that I'm with you in this, and people who are struggling or anxious, nobody's immune from that, because we're all seeing what we see at the moment, and the most positive people are going to get hit by this. So if you're someone out there struggling, for me, try and get in some sort of a routine where you get up, you get changed, you shower, you be hygienic, you do your bit of work that you got to do, immerse yourself in something like reading a book, doing some Lego, having fun with your partner, doing whatever you do, something that gives you a pep in your step before the reality of what's going on gets turned on your TV screen with the news. Hitting Netflix and Amazon's great. There's only so much of that you can do where you just overdose on TV. So I would say, let's stay positive as best we can. If you're really struggling out there, there's helplines, there's help that you can speak to people about it. Heck, I'm on email as well. You can email me and I'll give you my best shot on what I think is going to happen as regards to your own personal circumstance. I told my little friend the other day who emailed me about failing his test, I said, you're going to pass that test when we come out of this. You're going to be driving one of those trucks. You're probably going to get a second job. You're going to buy a house. Your baby girl, when she's born, she's going to be proud of you because you're going to be a hard worker. Because when we come out of this, we're all going to work our balls off. This is the way it's going to be. We're going to have to go back to work and we're going to work harder than ever. But we will come through it. And right now, all you need is your girlfriend. All you need is your lights on. All you need basically right now is food in the fridge. And once we're back at work, we can sort out the rest, because it's going to be a mess for everybody. Whether you're rich or poor, everyone's going to be in the same position where life's going to change when we come out of the coronavirus. And that's going to involve a lot of hard work. But I think we're all up for that task. And we've seen now the people who do obey the stay-at-home orders and the isolation, that's the right spirit. That's the right thing to do. The people who aren't obeying it, I covered on my last podcast, how I feel about them. So from a mental health perspective, we're all in it together. Nobody is immune from this. Even the most positive person can get hit. I'm not saying I'm always the most positive person, but I certainly had my own issue to deal with the other morning. And, since then, and I've had a talking to myself about it, I'm okay. And I'm waking up every day okay. And I got a bit emotional on Talk Sport the other day talking about it, because it's never really hit me like that before. So We'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll talk about the EFL, the FA, the PFA, and discussions that have happened today. Thank you. So today, the EFL, the FA, the PFA released a statement. And it was sent to all of us, obviously, and we got news of it before the statement came out. But the basic crux of it is the Premier League are obviously going to donate money to the NHS. They're going to bring forward solidarity payments, I think, from August till now, which is okay, but we'll talk about why in a minute. More is needed down the line. And the PFA have been in discussions with all parties regards wage deferments and pay freezes because of obviously the negative headlines this week. But so there's some important things to discuss right there. First thing I would say is, well, one more thing they also mentioned is our leagues are suspended indefinitely, obviously, for health reasons. And I'm fully behind that. A lot of people liked what I said on TalkSport about I didn't like the fact the FA cancelled a lot of the lower leagues and non-league competitions. And I've been a big advocate for we have to resume for the integrity of our competition. We have to finish this season. I didn't mean we have to do it today. I didn't mean we have to do it in 3 weeks' time. Of course, we listen to the health experts. But eventually, when we do resume and work and life resumes and people have to go about their business, our industry is going to resume as well. So we have to plan for that. You know, all these people out there saying, you know, there's people dying all over the place. Now's not the time for the conversation. I totally understand. I'm saddened by that. It's horrible to see the mortality and the death, but there's millions of businesses worldwide that still have the responsibility to their employees to plan for when this passes, for when we finally come out of this, and we will come out of it. So football's no different. So I apologize if my opinions upset people, rub people up the wrong way that I'm talking about when we resume, because now it's not, you know, people are sensitive to that, but I have to plan. That's my job as a chairman, as a co-owner of a football club. It's the responsibility to my employees to make sure that we're here when sport, when life does resume. And obviously we all pray that sooner rather than later. So the first thing I'd say is, look, the PFA got hammered this week, probably rightly so in a certain regard, and obviously they've had to respond to that. I discussed in my last podcast that I'd already had this discussion with my players 2 weeks ago about the possibility of a wage deferment. And it's not a pay cut, it's not a pay freeze, it's a deferred payment. In other words, a player earning X amount now, he will come down in that amount by 50%. The amount still owed will be carried over when the season resumes, when sports gets back to normal. Football creditors always get paid. So the players are protected. No matter what they defer now, they're going to get paid it back down the line. So the PFA basically have known about this for weeks. If I was having discussions 2 weeks ago with my players, what I'm wondering is why the PFA hasn't jumped on this, acted on this, spoke to their members, come up with a plan, gone out to all the clubs a week ago and said, look, guys, we're here to help. And the PFA have helped clubs in the past. I'm not going to criticise them for that because they've done that. They've been there, they've lent wages, they've helped clubs pay wage bills, not mine, but other clubs. But they could have been out in front of this. My only criticism is you've had health ministers and people coming out and having a go at footballers this week. If this had been jumped on a week ago, you know, plan drawn up, discussions ongoing, you know, basically it would have been a whole different headlines instead of the negative headlines that we've actually seen the last few days. So look, it's encouraging. They're in discussions. I didn't like the end of the statement yesterday where the PFI said, well, if you can afford to pay your staff, pay your staff. That's not helpful to anyone. Let's not pass the buck. We're all meant to be in this together. I've always said this. I think all footballers across the board, particularly in the Football League and the Premier League, it should be a 50% pay defer. You know, I'm going through a budget this morning that our finance director is sending over. We've got no income for the next 3 months. There's absolutely nothing coming into our club. Our season ticket sales from fans who are right now anxious and sitting at home wondering should they be buying one. So we have wages to pay. Yes, we're going to have to, like other football clubs, furlough our employees. We'll make up the 20%. None of our employees will lose their jobs. They will get paid in full. But now we've got to look at the players because you can't furlough the players. You furlough a player, you take the risk of their contract, basically. They find a way to get out of their contract. And then you lose the one asset you've got to maybe trade in when we get back to normal and we have bills to pay and we've got debts to settle. We're going to have to trade players and do business in the market. So it's really, really important we understand the furlough process when it comes to player contracts. So all I'm saying there is that the football community and players themselves, if they want clubs to survive, if they want their own clubs to survive, they have to see a common sense point of view here. And that's what I was advocating from the PFA and proper leadership. So today they've said there's a discussion ongoing. They're going to talk about deferring. It can't go on another week. It can't go on another 2 weeks. we need assertive action. We need them to come up with a plan. The plan needs to be executed now. Clubs need the communication, because some clubs are taking upon themselves to come to an agreement with their players, and that's great. We could be one of those clubs who will do that in the next 2 weeks if the PFA don't lead from the front. The talk of 20 and 30% defer, that's not enough. It's going to need to be 50%. If you think about a business with absolutely no income coming in, and they've got a massive wage bill of 30 or 40 or 50 football players, and some of those amounts are massive, it's unattainable. It's not financially possible, prudent. The clubs will survive this without the help from players. So again, I'm not begging. I implore the PFA to come up with a proper plan. Now, as regards to and it's not a bailout yet, but the fact the Premier League are putting 125 million up in solidarity payments, that's great. That's part of what I spoke about in my last 2 podcasts about factoring advance payments. But that's August payments and now. That's not going to scratch the surface. I spoke about this before. I think the solidarity payment's about 390, 380 grand. That's not going to save football clubs. It's not enough. The other point is that means possibly come August time, they're not going to get that payment because it's been brought forward. So what happens then? If football resumes in June, and July is when we start playing, and July is when all of a sudden we get hit with all the pay deferments and all the big bills, and sponsors suddenly have gone under or have been bankrupted or folded, we're going to need help. So I, again, implore that the FA, the Premier League, the EFL work on a bigger deal. They need to draw down on money from year 4 and 5 of the new Sky deal that takes place next year. That's what we need to do. We need a payment plan that if we do get advanced solidarity payments, EFL money, we don't have to pay it back in August. It's paid back over 2 years or 3 years. So if each club gets 600 grand or 700 grand or 800 grand, it means our budgets have to be stricter over the next couple of years to pay the money back. I'm all for bringing in I'm all for bringing in financial fair play to the point where that money can be controlled by the EFL and drip fed to us. It doesn't need to be given to us in one lump sum. So if they come up with a figure of 600 grand or 800 grand or £1 million, that money is given to us over 5 months. It's paid each month. Then owners aren't trying to take the money for themselves. They're not trying to pay bills they shouldn't be paying. The money goes back to paying for employees, paying wages, paying players, keeping the club solvent. That's the important use of this money, because you start advancing solidarity payments and some clubs get 300-400 grand at one stage. Who knows what some owners might do with it. So I'm all for some control over how the bailout comes. And don't forget, I'm also for saying the bailout is more of a loan that will be paid back. And I'm also up for clubs paying interest on the bailout amount. So I think the Premier League, the EFL, the FA, they have to do a lot more, because there's going to be clubs that aren't going to come out of this. I tell you right now, you're going to see clubs fall for administration. You're going to see clubs go under. There are going to be clubs that go into liquidation. If we want to make sure our industry is protected, if we want to make sure we come out of this, there's so many things that have to happen. One is we make sure there's no talk of voiding. We resume this whenever it's safety-wise from the public health point of view, that we can go out and play and finish the games. We need a plan in place for the transfer market to extend it. We need a plan in place for extending contracts, particularly for loan players that expire in May and the start of June, so that obviously the integrity of this season is finished with the 9 or 10 games. And we need a proper financial fiscal plan in place for clubs for the next 12 months, not for the next 3 or 4 months. So one advanced solidarity payment from August isn't going to solve the issue. Although it's a help, it's a start. And I'm glad everyone's talking, and I'm glad the Premier League are trying to help. They've got their own house to get in order as well. You've seen today, obviously, something that was brilliant. Jordan Henderson's leading the charge with all the captains in Premier League clubs, where they're all getting together and donating some of their wages to the NHS. I love that. I love the fact that that's already been, I think that was in place for the last few days. Even before the health minister, whoever called out footballers yesterday, the day before, I think those conversations were ongoing. The one thing I hate to see is, let's not throw everyone under the bus. Let's not slaughter footballers. I don't want to slaughter the PFA. Let's not go out there and try and publicly shame people. I've seen people write articles on it. I've seen people come out, like I think one of the ministers did yesterday, and say, well, footballers should do this and do that. At the end of the day, don't forget footballers. Yes, they earn an incredible amount of money, but they pay a large amount of income tax. They're one of the highest tax brackets in the UK. That money goes back into the public health system. So they're already doing their bit, and now they're doing more. And I'm not trying to advocate for any footballer out there or the greed that's in football. All I'm trying to say is, let's take a common sense approach to it. Let's look at it for what it is. Let's not throw everyone under the bus, because the last thing we need right now is the blame game. They did that, they did this. That's not going to help anyone. What we need is leadership. What we need is camaraderie. What we need is partnerships. What we all need is help. What we all need is a structured fiscal plan for how we come out of this, how we catch up with paying bills that we're going to owe over the next few months, and how we're going to be able to survive as clubs when the new season resumes after this one is finally finished. So they're all the things we have to take into account. I think Rick Parry's the man for the job. I think he'll do a good job running the EFL. I think he's already shown good areas of leadership. What I'm asking for is more. And what I'm doing is keeping the pressure on that, because I think it's really important. These subjects need to be spoken about on a daily basis. I can't just wait for an email saying this is going to happen or that's going to happen. We need to drive this. As owners, we need to drive this. It's really, really important. So they're my thoughts on today's, news that's come from the EFL, the FA and the PFA. And hopefully in the days and weeks to come, even more will come out. But it's heartwarming to see what football is already starting to do. I employ a lot of them. They're like the rest of us. They're all human beings. They want to help. A lot of them don't know where to turn, so they're obviously waiting for advice from the PFA. But I know in the cold light of day, when all is said and done, and you're in a battle, they're going to be in the battle with us. And they're going to show that. And I'm sure pay deferrals, wage deferrals are going to be a thing that's going to happen quite shortly. Thank you. I'll be back shortly. Right, in this final segment, I want to talk about what I'm doing at home with my family. Let's talk about TV documentaries. The one thing I'm doing with my kids is I'm lucky enough that I've like a cinema room I've built in my house. And I'm a real movie buff. So what I've been doing with my kids every couple of days is we're picking a movie from the 90s, the 80s, some of the classics. Definitely feel-good movies. Some of them are a bit more dramatic. We're going through a long list of things, and my kids love this. My kids are pretty much all teenagers. Yes, they're watching some movies maybe they shouldn't be because of the rated system, if it's 18s or 15s. But, when it comes to my kids and whatever else, they're quite mature, and I trust them. And I think it's important for pop culture to learn all the different genres of movies out there. So, for example, a couple of days ago, we watched Jerry Maguire, one of my favorite movies. And believe it or not, and agents out there are going to laugh. When I was younger and I watched this movie, I actually dreamt about becoming a sports agent, particularly in America, because you see some of the money the sports agents make. So I know that's very contradictory when you consider some of the battles and wars I've had with agents. But we watched Jerry Maguire, show me the money. And it was just such a feel-good movie. And everyone got a pep in their step from it. My kids absolutely loved it. And I think if you're out there and you're at home, share some of the movies you're watching with your kids and your family. Let's go back to some of the classics. What else have we done? We've done The Bodyguard, Armageddon, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. We did some of the classics from the 80s. I even did Silence of the Lambs with them, because obviously that comes from a classic book. And my kids, believe it or not, two of my kids love kind of creepy movies. So we did enjoy that. What are we watching later? We got a couple of movies on the list for later. My son wants to watch the Godfather trilogy. They want to watch Goodfellas and some of the things like that. So share some of your own movies that you've been watching with your family. Yes, we've got all the Pixar and Disney movies and the modern day movies that are out, but some of the classics are some of the best, and they're so heartwarming to watch. Even like with my kids, I watched Top Gun a few weeks ago, and the sequel's out this summer, and now they can't wait for it. And that's from 35 years ago. I did push out there watching movies like Gone with the Wind, To Kill a Mockingbird, but I think the black and white and some of them turned them off that. So that wasn't going to happen. The other thing I've been doing, I've been watching a lot of Netflix. I'm mad into this Tiger King at the moment, Joe Exotic. I haven't stopped laughing. Me and the missus watch Curb Your Enthusiasm, Larry David. At times like this, you need a laugh. And let me tell you right now, I couldn't stop laughing watching Curb Your Enthusiasm. For those of you sharing that kind of, call it sick humor or whatever you want to call it, Larry David is what everyone needs right now. So if you haven't ever watched Curb Your Enthusiasm, I implore you, download it, tune in, watch it. It is hilarious. As for Tiger King, some of the stuff on Netflix, some of the documentaries are just so out there. But again, you binge watch, don't you? We finished that last night. We must have watched 6 episodes in the space of 4 or 5 hours, just binge watching while I eat crap and put weight on, which is what a lot of people are doing right now. In fact, my missus is putting me to shame. She's still doing her gym lessons and stuff via Zoom from our gym here. And, her gym down the road are doing these online lessons and stuff like that. So she's bouncing in every day from her workout session. And I'm basically on my 10th coffee of the day and my next load of snacks. I did watch Sunderland Till I Die, season 2. I've got 1 episode left. I've had a lot of questions off people. Obviously, the guys, behind Sunderland and who took it over are look, they're probably getting hammered for some of the stuffs in there. When you put yourself out there, when you put a documentary on, look, I respect the fact you put yourself out there. Unfortunately, the way they're going to show it, it's going to be dramatic. They're going to show probably you at your worst instead of your best. Can you imagine me and Barry Fry being filmed on transfer deadline day, or me on the telephone with an agent, or me in an office with an agent hanging out my window, which actually happened once? Yes, it would make entertainment and golden TV to watch, but at the same time, you'd be embarrassed watching it. So I'm sure they look back at it and cringe at some of the moments. People are drawing attention to the Will Grigg transfer and deadline day. Look, guys, that goes on up and down the country. There are many clubs out there who've made mistakes to do with the price and overpaying for players on deadline day. We've probably done it ourselves. You want a player, it's late in the day, you've lost one of your best players. There's no perfect science to football transfers. Shit happens in football, unfortunately. And, I'm not going to criticise anyone involved at Sunderland for any of that. It's a massive football club. The one thing that comes across stronger than anything else is what a fan base they have. It's just incredible the support they have. Getting 46,000 for a game in League One, bringing that amount of people to Wembley. Massive fan base, big club for our league. I've said this all along. Sooner rather than later, somebody's going to get it right who buys that football club, and you could see them going straight to the top and to the Premier League because of the infrastructure. You look at their ground, you look at their training academy. I'm envious in a good way. Everything about it is you want to be better as a football club. So you look at all those things and go, yeah, hell yeah, I want that. Another show I loved last year I watched was the Leeds one. I can't remember the name of that. That was really, really good. I thought the Leeds owner and the people around at the top came across quite well. I watch all the All or Nothing shows, obviously, on Amazon. Really, really enjoy watching those. One of my favourite shows is coming back on Amazon soon, Bosch. I think it's season 6. So that's out in a couple of weeks. And look, we're all in the same boat. We're all watching stuff non-stop. I mean, you just binge watching TV all day long. You're watching movies with your kids. You're doing whatever you can in these mad times. We're all in this together. Again, share your thoughts, particularly on Twitter and social media. I'm going to wrap up this episode. I'm going to talk about a quick little bit of thing I've been doing with my manager just to keep myself sane. Every year we do Plan A and Plan B. Plan A is always based on Championship football. Plan B has been back in League One again for the following season. I got quite excited, obviously, 6 weeks ago when I started drawing up Plan A because I thought, we got a chance here. And I drew up Plan B. And obviously what I did with him last week was I said, look, let's start going through Plan A. And then a few days later, we'll do Plan B. So I drew up Plan A, and it was like an 8-page document based on recruitment for Championship football and who we wanted to keep, who we were going to bring in, the football club, the finances involved, how we could run a really prudent football club in the Championship that was self-sustainable and hopefully have a top 15 finish in the Championship. That was all a Plan A. The gaffer then obviously read it. He then came back with his own thoughts. And believe it or not, we were 98% in agreement on most of the players going out and the 3 or 4 targets for recruitment in each position we want to bring in. We went through that. I'm doing Plan B today. And now I'm afraid about that Plan C. And Plan C basically is if, say, the season was voided or we didn't get to finish the season, we go into a new season. We have all the debt that's carried over from this horrific time. We're going to have to do this, do that, make sure that we're sufficient, make sure that we're fiscally responsible, financially responsible, and we're not going to be able to bring in maybe the targets previously we want to bring in. And look, Plan C right now is at the bottom of my desk. It's not something I even want to discuss. So I'm going to go through Plan B with him probably tomorrow. And again, and you know what was great about that? Just for an hour when we were going through Plan A, we were just immersed in football. We didn't mention coronavirus. We didn't even worry about what was going on outside our front doors. There was no news. It was just passion. It was football. It was debate. It was healthy. It was that player, this player, and why would we recruit this player, and why would we get rid of that player? It was great to be lost in time. And for those of you out there, and I mentioned earlier on, if you're at that point where you're a bit low and it's ebbing and flowing with you, do something to get lost in time. Turn off the TV, turn off the social media, lock your blinds, close the doors, and just do something that makes you happy, even if it lasts 10 minutes. So I'm going to click off now. I hope you've enjoyed episode 3. For those of you who haven't listened to episode 1 or 2, you'll find it on Apple, on Spotify, on Google. You'll find it on anchor.fm. I really appreciate the support. I'm enjoying doing the podcasts, even with all the circumstances going on around outside my office, outside in the world. God bless to you all. Stay safe. For those of you who've lost anyone that's close to you, I'm sorry. My thoughts are with you and your family. And hopefully in episode 4 next week, there's better news in the world. We start hitting apexes and curves and coming down. We start getting better news. We've got to live for today and for tomorrow. And we've got to hope that life's going to resume. I know it's going to resume. I know you know it's going to resume. So let's stay positive on that. All the best to all of you. Thanks for listening.